Thanks for coming. We see a lot of familiar faces. My name's Dana Hansen. I work for Mayor Laredo. Just wanted to welcome everybody into this beautiful school and this wonderful auditorium. We have a flyer in the back of the room for events that are happening here at the new Community Theater, is what this particular room is called as part of Lincoln-Eliot. But just wanted to give a quick moment to share what the format will be for this evening. Our wonderful mayor is here. He's going to give a brief presentation and just sort of give you a brief update on what's been on his mind and how his first couple of months have been in office. And then we're just going to open it up for question and answer. So we're really looking forward to hearing what's on your mind. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible. This is a nice bite-sized group, so hopefully we can hit on everything. I will ask, however, if we start to see that we're getting sort of the same question many times and other people have their hands up, we'll probably move on to some other topics. So I just wanted to set that expectation on the front end. But I think we're going to have a great conversation, and thank you all for being here. And without further ado, Mayor Laredo.
Thank you, Dana, and good evening. Let me just start off. I have a number of colleagues from city government here. I just want to make sure I introduce them. That's one of the things you learn as a politician. If you fail to introduce your colleagues, they get really mad at you. And with 24 city councilors, sometimes you can miss a couple. So we're not going to comment on the number. But I have sitting right in front of me Julia Maliki, ward councilor from Ward 3. In the back over there, Alicia Pedalou, member of the school committee and chair from Ward 7. Ari Proyer, the school committee member from right here in Ward 1. I've got John Oliver, Ward 1 councilor at large and the council president. Next to him is Pam Wright, Ward 3 councilor at large. Did I see Maria Greenberg? Oh, Maria Greenberg, ward councilor from Ward 1. Did I miss anyone? Okay, good. All right, so what I like to do with these sessions, and this is, I think, the 8th one we've done, 8 wards, 8 cities, villages, 8 sessions. We've got one more online. Just tell you a little bit about myself, talk a bit about my priorities, and then I always tell folks that you can ask me anything, and I mean anything. I'm going to give you an honest answer. I won't necessarily tell you what you want to hear, although hopefully you'll like what I say, but I really do believe that I have an obligation to be candid with you. And I've been doing that at every single event I've held. So I grew up here in Newton. I went to Cabot, I went to Bigelow, I went to Newton North, as did my younger brother and sister. My parents are immigrants. My dad was born in Germany, Nazi Germany, left there in 1938. My mom was actually a concentration camp survivor, came here in 1948, and they moved to Newton when I was a very small child. And as I said, my brother, sister, and I all went through the public schools here. My wife and I moved back, it's almost 35 years ago, and we raised all 3 of our kids here. They all went to Ward, Bigelow, and Newton North. Our daughter-in-law, in fact, also went to Cabot Day in Newton North. So we have a strong connection with the public schools, both as a product of the schools and a consumer of the schools. I'm a lawyer. I practiced law for 40 years, and I retired on December 31st to take the best job that I have ever had. And I keep saying that, and my team looks at me sometimes and says, Mark, a little less enthusiasm would be nice. But John Rice, who's our Chief Community Services Officer, and like me, grew up here. John went to Our Ladies, when it was Our Ladies, his kids went through the schools here. And John and I get in every morning and we say to one another, we can't believe they're actually paying us to do this job. So I am... They should keep paying us, right. But truly, I am very fortunate to have this position. Before I became mayor, I was in the school committee for 8 years, including as chair, and I served 14 years in the city council, including as council president. So I really feel like I came into the job with a pretty good knowledge and appreciation for what city government's all about right here in Newton. And I also have the benefit of some private sector experience really, that was where I spent most of my working life, and that also has been very helpful in the job. So let me tell you a little bit about my management style, because I think that's actually critically important to understand what we're doing in the city. And then my 3 top priorities, and again, then I'll leave it for any and all questions you have. So look, I firmly believe that to be a successful mayor of the city of Newton, or any city for that matter, you don't do this job alone. You do it with a team. And we have an amazing team in City Hall. Dana Hanson, who just introduced me now, is our Chief of Staff. Dana worked previously in Mayor Fuller's office at the early part of Mayor Fuller's first term, and then became the District Director for Jake Auchincloss for 5 years. And I was thrilled that she agreed to take on the newly created position of Chief of Staff. Why is that so important? Not only does she oversee all the work of the executive team, but she's our liaison with the City Council, with the school committee, with our state and federal officials, and she's been the person behind organizing all of these events, along with a lot of other things just like that. It is critically important that we're getting out and meeting residents. That was frankly not something that was done as much before. John Rice, as I just introduced a moment ago, is our Chief Community Services Officer, another new position. Why did we have that? Because there was no interaction between older adult services and the library and the public schools and health and human services and the Jackson Homestead and Parks and Recreation. They were all operating in silos, and they were operating, frankly, without much support or supervision. We've changed all that. And so John's mission is to make sure that he's coordinating those groups, and we are seeing changes right now in the way things are operating in the city. 2 other key players I want to mention. One is Josh Morse. I think most of you know Josh. He was our building commissioner. Everybody loves Josh. Everybody loves Josh. Not that they don't love Dana and John or me, but they love Josh. Why? Because Josh is straightforward. He works his tail off. He's a really kind human being, and he gets stuff done. This building is a great example. On time and on budget. And he's done that for every single school building. He's done that for the fire stations. He's done that for the Cooper Center. And that's the kind of leadership we're going to have in City Hall. And we are looking very carefully at all of our operations to think through how we're doing things, how we can do that more efficiently and more effectively. And that's going to tie into one of my key goals, which I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. Maureen Lemieux is our Chief Financial Officer. She stayed. Ellen Ishkanian, who's in the back there, is our Director of Communications. If you get our awesome newsletters, and I really am going to take a little pride, they're really good, I think. Ellen is the person who actually does all the hard work writing them. So thank you, Ellen, for all that effort. My style, as I said, is to build a great team. And then in some ways to get out of the way. And what do I mean by that? I think it's critically important as your mayor that I am not spending my days in City Hall buried in detailed paperwork. There are very competent people who can do that. Rather, it's my job to do these types of sessions, to get out in the community, to talk to residents, to do what I did last Friday, which was go through, I think I went to 6 different places in Nunantum. I went to Nunantum Press. I went to De Pasquale's. I went to Icing on the Cake. I went to Mike and Patty's. And why? Because it's really important that your mayors show up and express to these businesses how important they are to our community, and also that I get to hear directly from people what their issues are, just like we're doing this evening. But it's not just external. I have now spoken with just about every department at City Hall. And I can tell you that mayors had not, frankly, done that for a long, long time. Why is that so important? Because we have really good people who work for the city. And I need to tell them that. I need to be visible with them. but I also need to hear from them what's going well, always nice, but what's not going so well. And I've heard some of that. And because of those conversations, we are making changes in how we do business at City Hall so we can be better at what we do. And I will say this, these visits, both with residents, with businesses, internally at City Hall, this is just the first round of them. We are going to keep doing this during my entire administration. We're never going to stop that. Why? Because it's a continuing process. We've got to be out there in the community. We've got to engage with our residents. So let me lead into the 3 initiatives that I'm focusing on, and then I really will stop. And I'll try to go through these quickly. One is schools. Why are schools so important? That's where our money goes, quite bluntly. Okay, that's where 2/3 of the tax dollars go. Number 2, that's why people move to this city. They move here because of the schools. And so it is critically important to me that we have a great school system. We have a superb new school committee right now. We have a great superintendent, and I'm really pleased of the fact that this year I've been able to find 5.75% more over an adjusted budget for the schools next year. That's so important so our school system can thrive. It's never perfect. If the school committee had its way, I'd be giving them 20% more, but too bad the money tree at City Hall is not there. There's a finite amount of funds, but it is critically important to me that we support the schools. And I think everyone in this room would agree that our public schools are important. And even if you don't have a kid in the schools, you still should care about the schools. Because first of all, it's good for our property values. It's why people move here. But it's also part of our responsibility as residents. Just like we have a responsibility to our older residents to make sure we're taking care of them, to make sure we're providing them opportunities, so too we have an obligation to our children. And I think that's part of our societal compact. Second thing that's really important to me is customer service. And what do I mean by customer service? You call City Hall, you should get a prompt response. So my general rule is 1 business day. You write City Hall, you call City Hall, you email me, you get a response within 1 business day. Now, it may not be an entire solution to your problem. Some problems take longer to resolve, but you're going to get something, or should get something substantive back. Why is that so important? It's simple. We all deal with this in our daily lives. If you call some agency or some big bureaucracy, you're placed on hold for half an hour, you try to get through to someone, they can't do anything for you, and then they hang up, frankly, you're rather ticked off. But if you call someone and they actually try to help you, they try to find a solution for your problem, you're generally pleased. And we owe it to our residents, because all of you are our employers. And that's what I've been telling the City Hall employees all the time. We work for the residents. At the same time, we can all do stuff that will help our employees. What does that mean? You know, you see a police officer in a detailer out, say thank you. You see a DPW worker fixing a pothole, say thank you. You stop by City Hall and inspectional services helps you get a special building permit or something like that, thank the folks there. I will tell you that the mere thank you goes a long way. And so I would urge us all to do that. I've been trying to practice that regularly now, and it really does make a difference. But we are going to be in the customer service business. Last, and I'll leave it at this. One of the great things about the city is our diversity. We have folks from all different places, all over the world, okay? Nonantum is the prime example of that. Nonantum is filled with folks from all different places, all different cultures. Some have been here for generations and have stayed, and that's absolutely wonderful, and others are brand new. And I think it is so important that we welcome people and that we build community. I do not want people stuck in their homes. I do not want kids on their screens. We have an epidemic of that. We have an epidemic of loneliness. So that organizations in the community, and Nonantum in particular, is really filled with them. The St. Carmen Society, the Nonantum Neighborhood Association, the Newton Corner Neighborhood Association, just to name a few, are terrific. They are exactly what builds community. And this village in particular has been a wonderful example of community. People care, they come out to events, they are there for others in times of need, and they try to also provide a lot of joy. And we need to be replicating that all over the city. And that's one of the things we're doing day in and day out to try that, build that community in Newton. And I think if we do, we're going to be a happier place. We're not going to be perfect. We're still going to have our disagreements at times, and that's okay. But we will have people who feel welcome in our community, and I think if we do that, we're going to be a far more successful place, and we can be an example for the rest of the state and the rest of the country as to how to do it right. So with that, we'll stop. We'll take any and all questions and ask away. Yes?
Hi, my name is Josh Lewis. We spoke on the phone in May about housing. I don't know if you remember. I want to just make one quick comment about community. I
Sure.
think, community is not something that just happens. It kind of needs to be facilitated a lot of times, physically. And what I mean by that is urban design, compact, walkable sort of communities. So I think that one thing to kind of create that is urban spaces like gathering areas. For example, the Union Center, plaza thing, I forget what it was called. But anyways, so my question was, so I wanted to acknowledge how you've been supportive of a lot of these recent housing developments. So from my research, I've seen that Newton faces a two-part housing crisis that's connected. So first, we have a lot of seniors that want to downsize, but in stay in Newton, they might not want to go to Florida, right? But they don't have a lot of options, right? And they have rising expenses, so it's very expensive for them to stay in their homes. And I think that we see this in the fact that I think the units in the JCC, that in 2 Light or was it Opus development, sold out really, really quickly. So there's obviously demand. So, and second, we have, it's no secret that basically everybody who grows up here doesn't stay here. And, they're getting priced out, and those people, ideally, I think historically they would be going and living in the places that seniors used to live in, and they would go into someplace else. But now, right now, they don't. This kind of the housing mobility is limited because we have limited options. So I was wondering if there's any policies that you'd support that would address this.
Sure. So the question about housing and policies we support, let me talk about that a little bit. This is probably the most walkable village in the city of Newton, and with the most locally owned businesses in the city of Newton, both of which I think are absolutely wonderful. We have, I'd say 10 or 15 years ago, the idea that there was no place for someone who wanted to downsize to go was true. We really had very few apartment buildings in the city. But that's changed, and that's actually changed considerably. Not only do we have Trio and Austin Street right on Washington Street, but we are building Northland, we are building Riverside, we have Dunstan on Washington Street, we have another Northland project on Needham Street, and we have a whole bunch of others actually breaking ground and out there. So there are alternatives for folks who want to downsize. It's interesting. People talk about that, but when then you actually ask them, they really like staying in their homes as long as they can. And my youngest is 21. I'm probably, I think, considered an empty nester right now, and I'm not planning on going anywhere for a long, long time. So there's that tension there, and there's also some other economic factors that go into play as to why it's difficult for someone who wants to downsize to make that work financially. I will say this, we are never going to make the city completely affordable. We are a very desirable community right next to Greater Boston, and next to Boston. And Boston is surrounded, one half of it's water, so you can only develop so much around Greater Boston, and that's going to limit us. Are we going to have more development in the city? We are. I mean, we passed a village, the zoning change, which is going to lead to more development. The key, though, is making sure that we do our best to have the developers come in and talk to us and think really carefully about what they're building before they go out there. And I say this to every single developer who shows up and talks to me, without fail. I say you better talk to the community first. You've got to talk to the folks who are going to be affected by your project. Because what I always say to people is, it's really easy for me, living in one part of the city on a dead-end street, to tell someone in the other side of the city, don't worry about whatever's getting built next door to you. Why can I say that? Because it's not affecting me directly. But if you're living next door to it, it does affect you directly. That doesn't mean we're not going to do projects. They are going to get built, but it means that you need to make sure that you're talking to the folks who are affected by it, and we do our best to ameliorate issues that come up. So that's what I think is critically important, and that's how we are acting in the city right now. Yes, right here.
I'm Amy Gordon.
Amy.
I moved here 35 years ago, living in Melrose, and I moved here because of the tennis courts. And there was tennis at Newton North before the courts are the way they are, and did not have kids. I used to play, park and rec, round robin at night. It was like great. But adding on to the point about livability, my kids who are 30 and 27, it's not possible, unfortunately, for them to live here, even if the house across the street is 1.2 million. It's not possible. That's unfortunate, and the housing that you talked about, the ones that we built, the ones Advil, Trio, my understanding, I haven't been there, but I know people live there, like, I don't know, $3,000 a month, $3,500, you gotta pay for parking. Makes it, even though it's near public, it does make it quite a challenge, even if, I'm not downsizing, staying in my house, but to afford that, plus supposedly your internet or this and that. And then I look at Washington Street where the new development is by Trader Joe's. For me, and I know there was a survey that went out on the mayor's letter or something that I just got about, do you like it, do you approve it? I barely heard anything. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a disaster. Might look nice for a minute, but if you're driving down Washington Street, that strip from West Newton, I don't know, I just find it scary. So I just look at living here, staying here, paying the taxes, paying the water bill, but, and there's many great things, you know, pickleball, tennis, there's still great stuff, there's community in it, there's the senior center that opened, the Cooper Center, like, wow. If people haven't gone, go, walk in for a tour, it's gorgeous. We're fortunate to have that, but we were like behind the times. So that's a great new addition, and younger folk are going there, no seniors. They're going there because it's beautiful.
So let me try to talk about the affordability piece, and I want to get to the Washington Street pilot, which I've heard a lot of strong.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So look, you know, we are not going to build significantly greater amounts of single-family housing in the city. We just aren't going to do it. We're going to have some one-offs, some lots where we can add, but there's just not the kind of open space that you'd get elsewhere. That's just a fact, and that's a constraint for us. I can't control what a developer decides to build, and developers, frankly, are looking to make a profit. What we can do, on a more statewide level, for example, is really thinking about improving our rail service. And if we had better rail service to places like Springfield and Worcester which would then allow people to commute in and out of Boston easier. That would take some of the pressure off a place like Newton, because you'd have other viable alternatives for people who want to work in the area to live in another area. I'm not suggesting we don't want people right here, and we don't want our kids to be able to move right here. We have a finite amount of land, and we have, unfortunately, desirable place to live. Not unfortunate, but we're a desirable place to live. And we are facing the same economics that everyone else is facing, really all over the state and indeed in much of the country, which is the cost of housing and building housing has gone up dramatically. So there's lots of different pieces there. In terms of the Washington Street pilot, how many of you got my newsletter today? Oh, good. All right. I think, first of all, I think you all know we're going to be putting the stripes back on Adams Street. That's a done deal. That wasn't hard for me. I'll leave it at that. The Washington Street pilot is really tricky, okay? As I wrote, I actually like a protected bike lane. I take my bike out recreationally. I think protected bike lanes. I feel safer when I'm biking, and frankly, I feel a lot safer when I'm driving, as opposed to sharing a rather narrow road separated by a maybe white line from somebody cycling 20 miles an hour, especially if it's dark out. I find that as a driver in some ways terrifying. God forbid I hit somebody. So having that protected lane is, in my mind, a good thing. There's a lot of other things I think we need to improve on that, and I'll just add this. I am never going to do any pilot again, ever, until I have some viable plan to paying for permanent improvements. And that is a huge mistake for us. We did something in Newton Highlands, for example. We spent almost $1 million on planning for a $15+ million potential improvement, and we don't have $15 million to put into Newton Highlands right now. I've got a whole other capital needs to deal with, including roads and sidewalks. So we have, under John Rice's leadership, we are going to try to implement the most important safety features of what is proposed, but we're going to do it at far less cost, and we're not going to spend any more money or very little more money on consultants. So we are going to be very thoughtful about doing that in the future. Same thing with Washington Street. We don't have the $25 million it would take to make everything permanent. And I'm not going to be doing a pilot when I can't figure out how to get it done permanently.
Mayor, just a quick thing, we have a special congressman in the way back.
Oh, I have Congressman Auchincloss in the way back. Jake is my former colleague on the city council. Jake, I'm just going to give you a shout out here. I think our congressman does an absolutely amazing job representing us in Congress. Not only is he extraordinarily thoughtful, even on the occasional, and I use that word deliberately, occasional times when we may disagree on something, but he has been a tremendous asset and friend to every one of us in the city of Newton. He's helped us, for example, with the Newtonville train station, getting funding for that initiative. So, Congressman, I'm very glad you're here. Thank you so much for that. Hold on, one second. Let me go over here first.
Oh, okay. My name is Mark Laredo, and I actually live in Ward 3, but couldn't come that night. But my kids went to Jackson. I go to church with Our Ladies, and I spend a lot of time in the lake. So, and I've been working with Josephine McNeil, who's interested in affordable
Sure.
housing. Because when you think about Newton, I get irritated with gold because they call it a Tony suburb, but it's really much more diverse than that. And I have just one question about the new development that's going to be largely affordable, where the armory was. I keep forgetting the name. There's so many of these things I can't.
It's the Armory. Well, it's probably going to get a new name, but the Armory is how I refer to it, so that's great.
And so then it makes me a little bit concerned that there's going to be a lot of families there with kids, lots of kids, and they're going to be, they're going to have fewer family resources to support them in terms of Newton's filled with great opportunities, but it's hard sometimes when you're on a limited budget to.
So
Are we going to, bearing in mind there's going to be a lot of kids and
Sure.
those kinds of things there, are we going to have support resources sort of integrated into that?
So for those of you who don't know Josephine McNeil, she ran Can Do for many, many years, and she's been a tireless advocate for folks who are of lesser means. One thing she constantly reminds me of especially, and I value this, is the importance of not just providing housing for those truly in need, but also a lot of those families or individuals need other services as well. They may be really below the poverty line because not only do they just not have a job or a low-paying job, but they also may have a lot of other needs as well. And so, yes, the answer is there will be services there, is my understanding. That's really important, and our Department of Health and Human Services will certainly work with them to make sure we're providing the services that folks need. And you know, the point of having folks of lower economic means in this city is exactly right. Many of us view ourselves as a relatively wealthy community, and we are. But there's a lot of people out there in this city who live among us, who go to school with our kids, who struggle. And they sometimes struggle tremendously, and they sometimes feel the need to hide that. So we may not even know that. So one of the things we're doing, for example, is quietly but thoughtfully thinking of ways we can help those folks. John, you want to share what you did with Albemarle and how we can help kids, families of lower income, use our basic public facilities over the summer?
Yes, one of the things that Mayor Laredo was working with me on is actually having both departments and nonprofits and Newton Public School and Newton Community all working together. Like in Newton Public Schools, they go through the financials for people when they know which young students need to have scholarships and everything else. And then it kind of moves over to Newton Community Ed for their great summer camps at Newton North. And so that works, but it kind of stops at the end Newton Public School road. And so we made the pitch to, we had meetings with Parks and Recreation, and we have the beautiful new gas pool, and we have Crystal Lake, and we basically had a meeting with Newton Public Schools, with Newton Community Ed, so that way the people who are already qualified would also be getting with information, and they would be queried if they want to have 3 passes to both aquatics aquatics at Gath and aquatics over at Crystal Lake. And so both Parks and Rec loves that they used to go through all these scholarship long processes. A lot of young families never did it. So now we're actually going out and identifying and finding them.
Hold on a second. Look, resources like Gath Pool and Crystal Lake are absolutely wonderful. That's exactly what a city like ours should have. And you know who it's the most important for? It's the most important for folks who don't have the money to belong to a country club, go to Europe for the summer, have a second home in the Cape, or send their kids to a very expensive overnight camp. And so it's critically important that we don't price the most needy families in our city out of the most basic recreational resources that they need to thrive. And that's why we're doing this kind of work, and we're going to continue to do that. Because I really, truly believe that in a city like ours, that is our responsibility to help those less fortunate than we are. You had a follow-up question? And then I want to get to this. Can you hold it then? Because it's over here.
Yes, Brian Wright, left-on Northampton resident. It seemed last year that one street in Northampton got all the attention, and the others were orphaned. One of the streets that was orphaned was Watertown Street. Watertown Street at 5 p.m. to 6:30, you would think it's the Mass Pike. It's gridlocked from Stop and Shop probably to Craft Street. And during the day, when it is not gridlocked, nobody. You might as well take those 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs down, because they fly down there. There's a crosswalk at Faxon Street.
Yep.
Nobody stops at anybody in there. And that's a crucial crosswalk because down at Faxon Street, the school buses go.
Yep.
I have seen people, little kids, literally have to jump out of the way. I have seen parents with strollers jump out of the way. And I know sometimes it's the minds that wait till the catastrophe happens, then do something. Is there anything we can do before, to put the carriage in front of the horse?
You always want to do things beforehand. So look, there's a few things we can do here, okay? Number one, if we don't have what are called, I think it's the term is RFF, there's these, you know those blinking lights you can use now in various places? They're pretty inexpensive, believe it or not, and at least I find them extraordinarily helpful, both when I'm a pedestrian and when I'm driving. When I'm a pedestrian, I'm now learning, I don't jaywalk anymore. That's something I've learned as a mayor. You have to obey all walking rules. But quite seriously, they are amazing when you're in a busy place like Northampton or Newton Center or Newtonville. You press that button and you're in the walk.
If I could just add one quick...
Add one thing.
Now, as the cars are heading eastbound towards the Stop and Shop,
Yep.
they stop at the crosswalk on Faxon Street because somebody's going by. Now, the car's right here, somebody's walking in the crosswalk here. They're passing on the right and going right through. And they don't see the pedestrian on the other side of that car.
It's not the only place, unfortunately, it happens. So we have a few things we're going to do. Okay, we put in these flashing lights. I think they're good for pedestrians. I think they're good for drivers. We step up police enforcement, directed patrols, because frankly, if people see a police officer and they get a warning or a ticket, I think like most folks in life, they behave better. We do have a shortage of police officers right now. We're down about 10 uniformed officers. We are actively engaged in trying to fix that. We have a brand new police chief who I'm really excited about. I think he's terrific. And that's something we're going to do. And when we get our officers up, we will do more directed patrols. That's piece number two. And look, some of that is, frankly, we have to every one of us has to use some common sense and courtesy. And so those are things we're going to try to do. As far as the traffic, boy, I wish I could solve all the traffic problems, but one thing we can do and will do, at the very least, is synchronize our traffic lights, particularly when traffic lights are closer together, because that in turn can create backups. And we have to do a better job there. There's some technology that will help us, I think, but that's something that we've been working on. Questions? Yes, over here and then over here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the topic of police, I want to commend you for what you did. I think a few days in office, signing on with Mayor Wu and other local mayors about standing exactly where you want Newton to stand when it comes to ICE using city facilities.
Thank you.
I have a question though.
Sure.
I think some of us were hoping, and obviously the temperature has died down significantly from what we all saw was happening in Minnesota. But I think what we're hoping to see is a more concrete statement of how the police would react in protecting the citizens should ICE come into the city. Do you think there'll be a part two?
We're always open to considering other things, but here's where there's a dilemma, there's a tension here, okay? I am not going to put our officers in harm's way. Full stop, okay? Our police officers are brave, they're thoughtful, they're well trained, and I use that word deliberately. They're well trained, and they are here to protect us. Frankly, that is a very different mentality, unfortunately, than certain federal law enforcement agencies right now, where they're not well trained, where they wear masks on duty, where they refuse to identify ourselves. You see a Newton police officer, there's going to be a name tag there. It's going to be a badge number. They're not wearing a mask. They don't need to wear a mask. They're our friends. They're our neighbors. But I cannot put our officers in a position where they're going to be in potentially an armed conflict with ICE agents. Because while our officers are armed...
That's the problem.
Pardon?
But we made them. We made the targets. We saw this in Minnesota.
Let me just finish here. I can't, in good conscience, ask our officers to engage with ill-trained people who are fully and heavily armed and put them in a completely no-win confrontational situation. But here's what I can do, and we will do, okay? There's something called the courts here in the United States of America. We know how to use the courts. Our legal team is in close contact and coordination with the Attorney General's office, with the legal counsel from surrounding communities, and we are working very closely with them. If there is some incident, if there's something that happens here, we will not be afraid to take appropriate measures to protect our residents. I realize that doesn't go as far as some people want. I get that. It's a tension. But I have an obligation to my officers as well as to the residents. And so we are going to try to balance that. Our officers will continue to be here to protect us. We will continue, and I want to be very clear, we will continue to support the rights of people to engage in peaceful protest, in free speech. That's something I think is profoundly American. I take that very seriously. And we will do what we can in an appropriate manner that does not endanger our officers to do that. And I realize it's not a perfect answer. There was a question, yes, over here.
Yes, hi, I'm Cedar Pruitt. I have worked hard on protecting, making sure that all morals are a place we can all use. I led and organized people against building on it a few years ago, and helped work with the city after that to fundraise $20 million to put in the 2 new beautiful pools and splash pad, the mural design, lots of things happening, climate change mitigation underneath the turf fields. I just got off the call today with a long call with Native Fish Coalition working on Cheesecake Brook. But during all this time, now as president of Friends of Baltimore, which is a free nonprofit, which I hope you can all join if you aren't already. We find car parts, pieces of cars all over the field, not all over the field, but all around the walkable areas. And so I've been very involved as part of that project in making sure that we have a safe place for people to walk. Abutted by 3 schools, we have a lot of seniors who walk there. And I worry all the time about this. And we did put it in our rapid rectangular flashing beacon, our RFP. But you know, I have also worked on a lot of other things. And when I hear these questions about walking street, or think about walkability and how crucial it is, I think it's more than just us being aware, and I think police presence is crucial. But I also think we need to have a culture of caring about making sure that people are safe walking and biking. You know, 2.5 years ago, I've been a Ward 1 resident for almost 20 years. 2 years ago, we had a resident die in Nantucket. He was a professor. He was hit on his bicycle, just trying to get through Nantucket. And he was on Watertown Street, right? So, you know, I've heard a lot about how we're making the street safer after that. This is a clear after scenario, not a before, unfortunately. And, I would love to, we talk about adding, we talk about books, and that's great, but we don't talk about how to make it safer. My kids can't bike it. I can barely drive it, and I drive it every day, but I have to play chicken with cars. I just want us to think more broadly. So I love your newsletters. I love that you support the Washington Street pilot. I very much do. But I also, I want us to embrace even the planters, and I want us to try things. I want us to pilot safer ways to get around the city so that we do have safe walking and biking. Even if it doesn't work out, I want us to try things. So I guess I would ask, what are some of your other plans for this particular area? To keep working on traffic and mitigating this need for speed that we see sometimes. I work with the state to bring the speed limits down to 20 within a mile of the park, and I've seen actually that has worked really well. But we still have people who fly through here at 3 o'clock when we have both seniors and young children on the streets.
So my statement about the Washington Street pilot was not because I oppose pilots. I think pilots are actually really good. Try it. Don't do it permanently. Try it, see how it works, see how you can improve. What I object to and I'm concerned about is a pilot with zero plan for paying for a permanent improvement. That's a problem. And we're going to do pilots all over the place. I'm fine with that. It's great for that. But we're going to do it when we also have put aside or the ability to have the funding to make a pilot permanent. That's the difference. In terms of traffic and safety, look, it is a multi-tiered issue, okay? Part of it is something as simple as making sure that our bike lanes are painted regularly, our crosswalks are painted regularly. I think we do a pretty good job of it, but not as good as we could. As we do any village, I think it's critically important that we make sure that our sidewalks are replaced and are safe. And frankly, a little bit wider if we can, because that allows businesses like restaurants to be able to put street seating, which I think in the warm weather is phenomenally attractive for people. It brings people out. People like to sit outdoors, and if you go to other cities all over the country and the world, they do that. It is about enforcement too. And it's also about and I hate to say this, but it's about our collective behavior. We all bear some responsibility about it. And if we all start thinking and talking with our kids when they become of driving age and others, and we all start to engage in better behaviors, we will have some effect on that. It's no different in some ways than how we now recycle. Okay, we never recycled before. Now most of us think about recycling as an automatic behavior, something you do. And I hope we start getting to the point where safer driving is part of that. But we're also going to look at every single time we do road work, do we need a different curb cut, for example, to make sure it's more handicapped accessible? There have been projects which have narrowed the street to make it easier to cross. You got to be thoughtful about those. There's some unintended consequences with delivery trucks and emergency vehicles. You got to be careful about that, but there's no reason we can't be thinking about that. And we actually do think about that every time we do work. Look, we are doing road work all over the city. I can't identify specific projects that are right here in Nantum, but certainly we are going to pay attention to Nantum as much as any other village in the city. I never, never, never want folks in any part of the city, Nantum, Upper Falls, Oak Hill Park, wherever. I never want folks to think that people in other parts of the city get more in the way of city services. That is not and will not be true in my administration. Full stop. Yes, over there.
I have a question about the veterans. In Newton, there's not a lot of veterans left. We're all dying off. What's happened? I belong to the post-war party, the American Legion, and I've seen over the years, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and so forth. We used to go into the schools and talk to the kids about what our missions were overseas, so forth. I've seen not a lot of effort. I know Seth Biden is part of the situation at the City Hall. My question to you, Mayor, throughout the cities that I've been involved with, I see posters of some of the Americans that have passed on, veterans from Vietnam, Korea, and Second World War. I have a bit of a crusade to have their posters and their faces on the telephone poles that I've seen throughout the cities like Bolton, Stowe, Tewksbury. You know, you go through these towns. It's a fabulous opportunity to just stop and think about what's been happening today and what our veterans have gone through. And I'm part of the Veterans Hospital over there in West Rochester. My feeling is I'd like to have you maybe sit down or somebody that you put in and talk to me about how we can get, there's been 13 or 15 Vietnam veterans that got killed over there. We're going to have a Memorial Day parade on the 17th, I believe.
Yep.
We're going to be going down Washington Street past Whole Foods and so forth. Take a left on Adams Street. And my whole world is here in Newton. There used to be a lot of very working class families here in the city of Newton. And those working class families, it was always the Mason-Dixon line and Washington Street up on the other side. And I get it. There was a lot of kids who were drafted from this side of the city, and I was one of them. And we didn't actually ask them, but we went. We did our thing. And in deference to the guys that have gotten killed over there, these kids are 20, 19, 18, and I'd like to have them honored and remembered by some of the telephone poles down on Adams Street. Wouldn't it be something marching around that parade? Because a lot of times there's not that many people watching that parade because it's Memorial Day. They're at their places on occasions. To turn that road and see the faces of like 20 of the veterans that have fought and died and lived in the city of Newton, West Newton, Newtonville, and so forth. Kids I went to school with, I know a lot of these guys. I knew them just like I'm talking to you. I'd like to see their faces as I walk by when I'm parading down that march. And I'd like to get an okay from you to be able to do that. And I'm not asking you for money. I think I could raise the dough with no problem. But I'd like to put about 20 faces of these veterans that have gone off, and their parents, the worst thing when I walked into my house, my mother, she collapsed and seen me come home. So the mothers that were there and found out that their children got killed over there, I'd like to see their faces on those telephone poles.
So let me, first of all, thank you and anyone else who's a veteran for their service, number one, okay? I don't think we thank folks enough. So I'm going to start there. Number two, one of the things we're working on right now is we are changing the Memorial Day parade in a couple of very important ways. One, we're changing the weekend. Frankly, people were away on the Sunday of Memorial Day. They weren't coming out to the parade. But two, under the leadership of John Rice, who's been instrumental in that, we are working very hard to reinvigorate that parade, to get school groups in there, to get other groups in there. I want this to be the same type of parade that I certainly remember growing up here in the 60s, when you'd see Newtonville, as you know, would be filled with folks watching the parade and honoring our veterans. So that's critical. We do, as you know, have fewer veterans in the city. I'm not gonna be at one of these things and commit to anything. I've learned from my team that I probably shouldn't do that, but I'll meet with you. You tell me when, okay? And Dana will arrange it, and John Rice will be there, and we'll talk it through. I can tell you we've done some other projects. Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8 is working on a renaming of city streets back in Oak Hill Park, which was built for veterans, for deceased veterans, primarily of World War II. I happen to think that's an absolutely wonderful idea. We're going to be supportive of that. And we will do other things as well to make sure that we're both honoring our living veterans and remembering those we've lost. And I think that's our obligation as a community, as a society, to do that. So we'll set up the meeting. Yes?
I was going to comment that over the years when my kids were in sports, that I only know this is the Newton North High School printing. I'm forgetting who runs it now, if they might look. But they print stuff, potentially like that, the pictures with a, waterproof.
Sure.
Maybe it's something the students could do at a donation that is done to.
Look, we're complete. I want to say this. We are completely open to any and all ideas, okay? Come to us, talk to us. We'll figure out what we can do, what we might want to tweak a little bit, but we welcome that. Terry, do you have a question?
Okay. I just wanted to just bring up 2 points. When you had said about our kids can't afford to live here. Some of these developments that are going on to bring back local preference, I'd like to just throw that out there. And as far as, first of all, I know the lines brought a lot of attention last year. And the lines, and I thank you for bringing them back. It may be just lines to some people, but it's a tradition that we've had for so many years. And my Nono and Nana are probably smiling from the heavens and saying, thank you, Mark Laredo.
All right, now I feel really good, so thank you.
And now I want to bring up, across our city, residents are losing confidence in ZBA. People show up, they take time out of their lives to speak, and too often it feels like the decision has already been made before the public even walks into the room. Public meetings should not be a box to check. They should be a place where the public is actually heard. And this isn't just about Clark Street. We are hearing the same concern from neighborhoods all over the city. When residents keep hearing back from City Hall, there's nothing we can do. The ZBA is independent. But independence should never mean accountability disappears. Here's the simple reality. The mayor nominates the members of the board. Mayor, we are asking you to show your leadership. If residents are losing trust in our boards, then restoring that trust has to start with your leadership. And I have no qualm that your leadership is.
So Terry, thank you. Let me share my philosophy on boards and commissions, okay? First of all, there's a lot of appointees right now who have terms of office. They're serving their terms. That's how the appointment process works. There's really 2 types of boards in the city, maybe 3. One are really advisory type boards, a solid waste commission, for example. A critically important commission provides us with tremendous levels of guidance about how to formulate city policies, but it doesn't have adjudicatory authority, okay? Second are like a design review or designer selection committee, which are involved with our public construction projects. Those are made up almost entirely of highly qualified professionals in the city who literally donate their time to make sure that when we're building a building or picking a designer, we're doing it using the best possible principles. They're constantly looking and checking on us. Could you do this more economically? A very important place, one where there's no ideology involved. It's really, are you getting competent, experienced professionals, architects, engineers, solar energy experts, whatever the need is, we're getting those people to serve. The third are boards like the ZBA, the Conservation Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, Historic Commission. Those are boards that actually have independent authority, independent of the mayor. So what are my criteria for folks I'm going to appoint to these boards and commissions? Number 1, I am going to really open up this process so that we get as broad a pool of applicants as possible. I have been very concerned over the years that we're not getting a cross-section of the city even applying for these positions. Why is that so important? Because I want folks in their 30s and 40s who are here now, who have moved in, maybe they've been here 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. I want them involved in civic life. It's critically important we do that. I want people from all across the city who have different backgrounds to be part of our boards and commissions. We are better for that. At the same time, I want people in these boards and commissions who have some professional expertise in the areas they're supposed to be regulating, okay? It doesn't mean that every single person in the Parks and Recreation Commission has to be a conservation expert or a parks expert. You're probably not going to get that, and you do want a good cross-section of people in any board or commission. But you do generally need people for those adjudicatory type boards, like ZBA, like Conservation Commission. They've got to have the basic technical knowledge. And third, I am determined not to have folks who are there to promote their ideology on a board. I don't think that's right. And I don't care what the ideology is. I don't care if you're pro-development or anti-development. If that's your mission, if that's how you're going to approach the work on a board and commission, I don't think you're the right person to make those types of decisions, the adjudicatory decisions. I want you to be like a judge. I want you to be fair. I want you to be impartial. And I appeared before judges for a long, long time. The best judges were the ones who genuinely listened to the people in front of them. And that's the other thing I'm going to demand of anybody I'm going to appoint to a board or commission, that they are willing to listen, particularly when there's a controversial issue. I want them to listen and genuinely listen. It does not mean you're necessarily going to get everything you want in front of a board or commission. It doesn't work that way. There's always people who are a little bit unhappy. But if people feel like the process is fair, if they feel like the people who are making the decisions are approaching it with an open mind, then I think people buy into whatever the decision is much better. And that's how I'm going to approach boards and commissions in the city. Okay, hold on a second there. In the back, all the way in the back. Gentlemen, yep. No, Peter. Sorry, I didn't see you there for a second.
Peter Harrington. I've been around a long time. My children went to Lincoln public schools. My grandchildren went to Lincoln public schools. I've represented Nonantum at City Hall. I've represented Nonantum at the State House. I'm a lawyer, and I've represented the people of Nonantum.
Here, use the mic. Okay.
I look around here, and I see a lot of people I don't know. The people I do know aren't here. So I've been speaking for them for many, many years, and I just want to speak to them again.
Sure.
They supported you. They have high hopes of you. They are concerned that the discrimination that has gone on in past generations against Nonantum is reoccurring. They are concerned about it. They don't believe, they don't want to believe that it's coming, but they, just being naturally hardworking people, look at the worst side. They want to preserve Nonantum. They want to preserve the neighborhood. You grew up in a small home. They grew up in small homes. They want to keep those homes. They don't want them torn down and replaced. They know that when a house gets torn down in Warren, on a 15,000 square foot lot, people go crazy because someone's going to build a bigger house, a bigger single-family house on the lot. And everybody runs around and tries to do something to help protect Warren. But when they tear down a little house in Nonantum and they build two houses, two homes there, or four, but tear down 2 or 3 houses and build 20, people say, well, that's progress. The people of Nonantum are looking to you to be impartial, protect their interests. People want to preserve parks. People want to preserve other things in Nonantum. We want to preserve Nonantum. We need your help, and I'm here to give you that message.
So, Peter, first of all, thank you for for speaking. Always appreciate that. And thank you for your service for the city for many, many years. Look, there's an element of trust here, okay? And my job is to earn your trust. Not every decision I make, no one is going to be thrilled with every decision I make. I can virtually guarantee that. But what I do hope is that over time, I've earned your trust so far, and I will continue to earn your trust by making fair decisions. And the idea that people feel like they are treated differently in one part of the city than another part of the city, I think is plain out wrong. That should never happen. I can't stop how people feel. I have zero control over that. But I can tell you that our actions will be to ensure that every part of the city is treated the same way. And that's all we're going to be able to do, and I appreciate what you have to say, Peter. Fran.
Can I just follow up on that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I heard some folks
You want the mic?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So, I heard some folks talking about the urbanization of Newton and promoting more density. And frankly, for me, I love the fact that we have 13 small villages wrapped inside one city. And I'd like to see that preserved more. And I'm worried, some people mentioned Dunstan East and things. We're putting in these massive developments that are taken away from the very fabric of the village centers that we like. So could you give us your opinion on like where you are on the village center?
Yeah, look, I'm a huge believer in village centers, just like I'm a huge believer in neighborhood schools, okay? And they're actually very similar in concept, okay? Neighborhood schools, like Lincoln-Eliot, where you can walk your kids to school, or Ward School, where my kids could walk from my house, or Cabot, where I had to walk a little further, but you know, the parents didn't drive you back then, you could walk to school too, are critically important. They're critically important because they build community. Likewise, our villages is one of the great things about this city. That's why people move here. They love our villages. So are we going to have development in the city? We are, okay? There is no reason a Riverside parking lot, for example, should remain vacant for 15 years to support some cars parking for the T. That's just a terrible use of land, okay? And I happen to think that the Northland project, on balance, not perfect, but on balance, on a commercial street, was a reasonably good use of land. Did it affect folks in Upper Falls negatively? Absolutely. Could we have done a little bit more to alleviate some of those concerns? Probably could have, okay, in hindsight. But yes, that is a development that is appropriate in my mind. So you are going to have developments. But I think it's very fair to say, what benefit are we getting by tearing down a modest house and building a house that's at the edge of the lot line? Maybe you add one unit, but you're not really adding anything in terms of affordability. You're probably taking an affordable unit off, and you're building to the end of the lot lines. I know this is something that the city councilors are paying very close attention to. They're working on this. This is attention. But should we be developing, for example, some of the manufacturing area in Nantum and have more business development there? Yes. Yes, that is good. That's good for the neighborhood. That's good for business. It's good for our store owners who will have more customers. So it is not a one-size-fits-all. There are places where we are and want to encourage more development. But it should not be a free-for-all. And I think part of our job in the city is to make sure that we're managing growth. And again, I go back to something I said earlier because I really believe this. Developers have to talk to the folks who are most affected by their projects. That's just a given as far as I'm concerned. And it's not just going through the symbolism of having a conversation. It's really trying to address whatever concerns are being raised and trying to work those through as much as possible. So, hold on, if you asked a question, you asked a question. Anyone back here? Oh, you didn't ask a question before. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, please. I'm so sorry.
I don't actually live in Nonantum. I spend a lot of time here. I shop at Trader Joe's, and I live in the leased house in an expensive neighborhood. And I'm scared to death because they built one of these modern ugly things next to me and they sold it for way too much money, and my taxes are going to go whoop. I've lived in Newton since the 70s. I live with my son who has a disability. I'm scared to death. I'm not downsizing. And I'm definitely not downsizing in the armory thing. I have a saying which I use with my son all the time. Oh, look, they've built some more people storage units. Because that's what it looks like, people storage units. I think about that street going down Washington Street. I can actually get to Trader Joe's in a safer manner. But what are those pots? I can't remember the bloody pots. And when I think of how much money you might have spent to put a dog yard next to the turnpike, what a waste of money. Why don't you get people to train their dogs? And you know, if you need someplace to walk, the Cooper Center is fabulous. I think that's one of the best things that's ever happened in the city. And I originally thought, why spend so much money on it? And now I'm so glad they did. It's wonderful. But if you need to go walk, go down to the Cemetery Arboretum, which is absolutely beautiful. And you won't have anybody running you over with a bicycle, a motorcycle, or anything else. And it's peaceful, and there's wildlife, and it's beautiful. Or you can walk around Bullow's Pond. There's lots of things in Newton. But as far as downsizing, I mean, I'm 81. I'm thinking about this. I'm scared to death. What happens? I'm not downsizing. I love my little house. I love my little house. And my fellow who helps me fix it says, oh, you'll be a tear down because you're in a nice area and they'll tear it down and put up a McMansion, or they'll put up one of those box-on-box ugly things. And what am I supposed to do? And what is my son supposed to do? And does anybody care?
First of all, we care. Okay, I'm going to start right there. We actually care. So what I want you to do before you leave tonight is to connect with either Dana Hanson or John Rice. I want to make sure that we try to talk to you individually about issues that you may have individually, probably not for this setting. I will say dog parks, boy, if you want to set, it's like leaf blowers, okay? If you want to set off people in terms of for or against, dog parks are a prime example. Folks who have dogs absolutely swear by them and they'll come out in force. Folks who don't want to have a dog park will come out in force and tell you why they're bad. Like many things in life, personally, I think there's room for compromise. I think dog parks are fine. I don't think we need them at every street corner. There's a balance. And I think that's true of a lot of other things in life as well. And sometimes I think we tend to get so, I'll generalize, we tend to get so caught up in whatever our particular cause is that we forget that life is full of balance, that it involves trade-offs, that we're not going to make everybody happy all the time. And we try to think that through carefully rather than insisting that our way is the only way and the only right way. And I think of all of us, at least I try to remember that a lot in my decision making. But we will talk to you afterwards. Yes, back there. Woman there and then over here. Here, I'll bring the mic up. I feel like I'm a talk show host. This is great.
My name is Norman, and I have 3 questions.
Sure.
One is that Walmart season is coming, and a lot of uses of Charles River for this area, and that's the only way that allow us doing some nice walking and jogging, and I do that a lot. So I wonder if we could have some kind of improvement for Newton area around the Charles River, because compared with Watertown, our Newton, basically nothing.
Can I respond to that?
So, yes. I have two more questions.
Why don't you ask the two other questions and then I'll try to answer all three. Go ahead.
Second question is that I think we may want to train public service staff because, especially on the parking enforcement area, because when they issue a ticket, tension is there. How do we handle that? That's critical. It's give a lot of impression to whoever visit or the citizen of this neighborhood. This is my second question. My third question is that before your campaign, you said you want to use data to help you manage. And I wonder, what's your approach specifically?
Sure. I'll answer all three.
Thank you.
So, great questions. I'm going to try to remember in order, and if I don't, my former city council colleagues will tell me what I missed. So look, first question was about the Charles River and walking paths. The area next to the Charles River is generally not controlled by the City of Newton. That's Department of Conservation and Recreation. That is a state agency. Where we do have authority, I don't know, frankly, exactly where the line is between our property and the state's property. We're certainly going to go back and do two things, okay? We're going to try to figure out what's ours, and what's ours our Parks and Recreation team can take a look at to make sure at the very least it's clean and cleared. That's a basic responsibility. What is the state's? We'll reach out to our state delegation, we'll reach out to the folks at DCR and advocate for them to do the right thing there. So that's piece number one. What you said about parking enforcement is really, actually very important, okay? Why is it so important? Because it's a hard job, all right? If you've ever talked to a parking control officer, and I do, you know, they talk to them all the time. It's hard, and people often don't like getting tickets, and people often are not nice to them, really not nice to them. And so they have a responsibility, like every single person who works for the city, our police, our fire, our DPW, the folks in inspectional services, to bend over backwards to try to be as polite and nice to our residents as possible in a lousy circumstance. You're giving someone a ticket. Nobody likes that. So we have a responsibility as a city to do the best we can. And hopefully our residents in turn will all try to remember that these are human beings, they're doing their job, they're trying very hard, they're there to enforce the parking rules because overall those rules have very important effects. Whether you park in front of a hydrant, for example, you're literally endangering public safety and preventing a firefighter from getting there in time of emergency. If you park in a handicapped parking spot, you're causing real harm to someone who may need to use that. And if you're sitting too long at your meter in Newtonville or Newton Corner or Newton Center, you are actually harming someone. You're harming the businesses who depend on some regular turnover of those parking spaces for their success. And if people just park there all day, they would not get the turnover they need to run successful businesses. So those are two. Remind me of the third. I'm getting data.
Data, and also the lights are so bright in here, but Rufin, of course, is in our IT department, so she's asking about data. Right, Rufin?
All right.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you, Rufin. So I'm going to answer. Go ahead.
Sorry, the reason why I mentioned that is that about 4 weeks ago, I just drive about 2 miles to the city hall to work. And I know there is a stop sign, one of the stop sign uses a high accident area. I have been very careful, but I got accident there. So I wonder, when police issue an accident, does it share with the DPW? And then DPW do anything, something to prevent future accidents? That's my point. That's why I want to bring up and share data.
So we do look at that information actually very carefully when we are making decisions about where to put stop signs, about street improvements, about other things. The question is, do we use data? We have been doing that for years. We continue to do that. I'll give you some other examples of data that we're using, for example, all right? We are looking at our 311 system. How many of you ever use 311? How many of you think it's good right now? Okay. Much smaller number. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think early on when it was first implemented, it worked pretty well, okay? It is not working well, or was not working well earlier this year when we took office. We are now using our data to fix that, okay? We are looking at data and saying, how long does it take us to respond to somebody? What kind of responses are we giving them? And really thinking that through as we make decisions. We are going to look at data on Washington Street. What is the number of people using certain driving, using bikes? Those are very important data points to be thinking about. And we are trying to use data in a whole host of other manners as we think through our decision process. Because one thing, and you know this especially, we are working very hard to improve the way people can get information from the city. And that includes our website. So we are thinking about, for example, here's an example of using data. If no one's visited a web page on the city website for 6 months, get rid of the web page, okay? That's pretty basic, right? But that's the kind of data we're using as we're upgrading our website, because that will allow us to have a leaner, more efficient website. So we are continuing to use data. I'm sure there's other examples I've missed on that, but we are looking at that. We are looking at data on how many people visit the Cooper Center. It turns out what, John? 10 times how many people visited now that we have a new building as opposed to using it before. That's a good example of data. That's not just, it feels busy. Feeling busy is nice. It's fine. It really doesn't tell you something. But when you have a tenfold increase in usage, that tells you you have to provide more employees to manage that work. There are more people using it. You've got to provide the employees who can provide the services so our residents get the benefit of it. So that's how we're continuing to use data. I know that on the school side, our superintendent is using data every single day to drive decision making, particularly around student performance. That is hard. It's a change for some folks, but in my mind, it's absolutely critical to figure out, is some strategy working, and are you serving kids appropriately? Or do you have gaps in your educational program that you need to fill? But if you don't have the data, if you don't measure anything, then you're going on gut instinct or anecdote, and that's, in my mind, a very poor way to govern. So, yes.
So Ray Huffman, Ward 3, 50-year resident, member of the board of the West Newton Center Foundation. I want to talk about parking from the other side, not from the ticketing side, but from the availability side. We're very grateful to the city for CPA funding, and when those hearings were taking place, more than one city councilor said to me and other members of the board, you have to do something about the parking in West Newton. We don't have any parking, we never have, and the building was built in 1937. I suggested that maybe the city has to do something about the parking. The number one complaint we have at the theater is the quality of our seats. The number two complaint is challenge of parking. Because yes, the merchants mostly want turnover, but movies run 90 minutes, 120 minutes, plus the time to get to and from the car. People are always coming in. We saw a woman just the other day, a grandmother with a small child, wondering where can she park to take her granddaughter to see this movie. Can you say anything about parking, particularly in West Newton, Newton Corner?
Yeah, so look, I'm going to, it's great. We're a suburb, okay? Most people, like it or not, in this city drive. we have a fair number of people who are perhaps what I like to say is my vintage. So on a Saturday night going out with my wife, I'm not likely to be walking in the middle of winter 3 miles to go or 4 miles to go to West Newton, nor am I taking my bike. Okay, let's just be really candid about that. So we have to make sure that we accommodate the ability for people to park if they want to go to a village center. And I think we frankly are misleading ourselves, and we're not being honest with our businesses and we're not being honest with our residents, at least now, because we depend on automobiles as a primary mode of transport. We have to provide for parking. 25, 30, 40 years from now, if we all have autonomous vehicles that we call up instantly like an Uber or a Lyft, and that's how you get around, we probably won't. We'll have different modes of transport. We've had different modes of transport over different generations. But for now, we have to be thinking about parking. So what are we doing about that? We are constructively working with places in Newton, in West Newton, to think about where we may get additional parking, particularly at nights and weekends. We are looking at various strategies about where we park. We have a lot of police officers, frankly, who park in West Newton. I'm going to say when we build a new police station, we need to plan for sufficient parking on site there. So we're taking some of those both personal vehicles and police vehicles off the streets and thereby providing additional parking. In places like Newtonville with the Cooper Center, we are actively engaged as we speak. John's been spearheading this effort to really come up with a parking plan that works for everybody as best as possible. People who are visiting Cooper, and we'll be there for more than an hour or two because people stay at Cooper for a while. People who are patronizing our local businesses and our residents so that they're not inundated with cars on both sides of the street. And again, it's winter here in New England, and we always have to think about what that looks like too. So the short answer is we are looking at that. In Newton Center, we are working with the Parks and Recreation Commission to take the plaza, which is a wonderful concept I should say, and move it to the green where there is a lot of room, where I think we will get approval, and we're going to free up parking spaces there that our businesses are telling us they really want. So we actually will do two things that are successful at the same time. So we are working on that. It is going to be a long effort. It is not going to be perfect, but it is certainly very high on our list of priorities. Yes?
I have two quick follow-up questions. On the question about development and sort of like Nonantum being treated differently from other neighborhoods, I presume the main reason for that is that zoning is different in Nonantum than there's a lot of the small houses torn down in Nonantum. It's likely to be zoned to allow for multi-family development. So you can get
That's part of it. I mean, the zoning does vary in different parts of the city. That does contribute to that. Again, you know, we have the counselors who are here. Is Maria here as well still? Okay.
And we do have to wrap up.
You know, are aware that that's the zoning is work that the city council does, and they're working
My
on that.
question is actually, are there other mechanisms? I know there's been like, years of conversation about zoning, but you mentioned like developers should talk to the neighborhood before they go in to do a project. Is that a requirement? Is that something that the city could like put in as a regulation?
Well, I can tell you when I was the chair of the land use committee, I wasn't about to listen to anybody who hadn't done that. Okay, that was, frankly, I made that kind of a de facto rule that I expected you to have those conversations, and I think our current leadership has adopted the same philosophy. So that's really important. The other thing is we are, and the zoning and planning committee is working on this, is the rules dictate a lot of what gets built. So if you have setbacks that are really limited, you can build to within 5 feet of the lot line, for example, you are encouraging developers to engage in certain behaviors. If you require people to build 10 feet or even 15 feet from a lot line, they have very different behaviors because they can't build necessarily the same thing. There's a tension, always a tension. We don't want to discourage somebody from being able to put an addition on their house. And you got to think about that when you're doing a rule like this. And we also have to be careful not to diminish folks' property values because it's a significant asset. We don't want to make a property undevelopable. But I do think there are reasonable limitations that we can put in place. One was we had a rule where you could build 36 feet up if you tear something down. Well, we have some developer in West Newton who built 8 feet of soil, okay, and then built 36 feet up. And I actually campaigned when I was knocking doors and someone there showed me that house. We got rid of their ability to do that, which was unfortunately too late for those folks, but we did that. And those are other common sense things we can do that will be helpful.
Can I ask you a real quick?
One follow-up, sure.
Is there any conversation, like long-term conversation about better bus routes in Newton? Because like I would not walk to the movies in the winter, but I would take the bus instead of driving. And we take the bus all the time into Boston, but we can't really get around.
You know, I'm going to be really candid. This is a huge challenge for us. We've been spending a lot of time talking about it. It's particularly important with the senior center. How do we provide transport to and from the senior center, especially say for folks who live in the Newton Housing Authority buildings? You know, they need the senior center. It's very important. A lot of those folks are older. And they may not even drive, and yet it's expensive for them. So we do have GoGo. It's moderate success, to be honest. It's not perfect. It's better than nothing. But we are looking at those alternatives. I will tell you that the idea of getting the MBTA, for example, to do an intra-city shuttle, the T can't even fund its most basic improvements right now. I would never tell people to expect the T to do anything better for us right now. We are going to continue to look at that. We're exploring things like volunteer drivers. Will people be willing to drive one another? Are there other ways we can do that? I'm open to any and all suggestions. I have finite funds, and there's also the tension. How much are you willing to pay for a ride in the city as opposed to taking your own car? And that's a whole nother issue as well. But something we're continuing to work on. And Dana, am I wrapped up?
We can stay for a few minutes afterwards, but, one more question over here. Last question.
Okay, you don't even have to answer. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, I emailed your office. I got a response from you. That was amazing. Thank you. Keep doing that.
I always try to respond quickly.
This affordable housing conversation made me think of an article in the Boston Globe about Bow Market, which you should read if you haven't. I'll send it to you. It's super cool. It's about like small businesses and walkability. Washington Street going west needs a left turn signal onto Church. I'll email this all to you. Pearl Street needs dedicated speed control. We had a traffic-related death last year. I respected a stop sign. I was denied. Please, Lord, let's look at Pearl Street. The Spears Garden is new. Come visit. It's lovely. It's amazing. We really need a new fence if you can find it in your coffers. I would agree with you, the planters on Washington Street are weird. The aesthetic is not mine, but the greenery is good. And then just one plea to think about. Watertown lifted its winter parking ban yesterday. If you would be willing to think about lifting it today, that would be much appreciated.
The winter parking ban.
The overnight ban was lifted
The
in
winter
Watertown
parking
yesterday.
ban
You
is.
don't have to answer now.
I'm definitely not answering that one now. Look, as we all know, the winter parking ban issue was very heavily debated. It was up for a vote. Voters voted to keep it, real narrow margin. Maybe the best thing I've seen in democracy in this city for a long time is the folks who were for the ban and the folks who are against the ban are getting together. They're working with our Public Safety and Transportation Committee to try to come up with some solutions. That's exactly what we ought to be doing when we have these really difficult problems with really competing interests. They are competing interests. Narrow street, snowbanks, almost impossible for a public safety vehicle to get by if you have cars parked on both sides. Yet you got a kid coming home from college over Christmas or winter break, or you have your teenager now is a car, and so where there were 2 cars in your family, there are now 3, and there's only 2 parking spaces. That's a huge hardship. So we are working on that, and I guarantee I'm not going to respond to that one otherwise tonight.
It's been done before. It wouldn't be the first time. It's only 2 weeks away.
I appreciate that.
Just a thought.
and a very good advocate for that. Look, folks, I just want to thank you again. These are great. We will be back. We were going to try to do this every 6 months or so, and I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes if people have other questions. And again, thank you for being here. Have a great evening. Yeah.